Welcome to episode 9 of News for the Blues, your weekly bite-sized episode brought to you by the Unholy Trinity Everton podcast. Well, me. But it's always great to jump on post David Moyes pre-match press conference. Obviously, travelled to Brighton, long trip down, early press conference today, about 10:30. Well, a little bit later than that because David Moyes, like his predecessor, was he's never on time, is he? So he spoke to the media a little bit earlier. I forgot last week to point out this shirt that was behind me, by the way. Someone pointed out that it was obviously the Charlton 30 shirt from his first season at the club and thought it was some kind of little message before James Garner announced he'd signed a new deal to 2030. I'd like to say that was the case, but it wasn't. It was just pure coincidence. But today, behind me, the 2014-15 home shirt with the man himself, Seamus Coleman, on the back. Fabulous shirt, I thought, with the little navy collar. One of our best under Umbro. Personal favourite of mine, that one. Just a reminder before I jump into, obviously, this week's updates. Make sure you check out before tomorrow's match, episode 298 of our main show. Great show. It was recorded on Tuesday after Monday night's 1-1 draw against Leeds. Me and Lee were joined by the fourth wheel, Phil Hayward. So make sure you check that one out before we do travel to Brighton tomorrow. But let's jump straight into the latest news from the club. And again, as per usual, we go through the player availability. A big thing that came out today, obviously, was David Moyes. Didn't confirm, but he said they are looking at surgery for Jack Grealish and that stress fracture of his foot, which likely means that he has played his last game of the season, potentially his last game for the club. Let's see what happens in the summer. I think a lot of us hope that a deal can be done with Manchester City, but a real shame and a real sad end to his time this season at the football club. He's been a fabulous addition. He's raised the quality, I would say, both on and off the pitch. And I'm sure he's a player that a lot of the younger players look up to. So hopefully he can make a good recovery. Hopefully we can look to do some kind of deal in the summer. But the latest news come out of the football club is that could be him done for the season. Everybody else in terms of who's available, obviously we had Keenan Dewsbury-Hall, Jared Branthwaite got 45 minutes against Leeds on Monday, which was great to see them both back. Obviously, give them some minutes in the legs. Jared Branthwaite, I thought especially, was absolutely fantastic, wasn't he? And I wrote my BBC piece this week in regards to, obviously, post-Leeds, but a lot of the focus was on Jared Branthwaite and my opinion on him. I think he's comfortably our best centre-half, by the way. I think that the level he can get to is right up there at the top. I fully expect him to be an England regular. What is he, 23 years of age? He's got all the attributes to be a top player. He's developed a lot over the last sort of couple of years, even with this 5-month injury that he suffered. And he comes back in on Monday night, and I thought it was fantastic. He was the one trying to get us playing football. He was the one who was making those passes through midfield, taking, say, 2 or 3 players out, firing the ball in with a bit of purpose. He's just a great footballer, isn't he? So great to have him back. Obviously, Michael Keane is back from suspension tomorrow as well. I wouldn't be throwing Michael Keane in there, I've got to be honest with you. I think the manager was not asked, but a comment was made in terms of potentially breaking up, obviously, the defensive partnership, say, of Jake O'Brien and James Tarkowski. He said, well, that's you saying that, not me. I think Jared Branthwaite has got to come back in from the start. I don't think there's a question. If he's come through Monday night okay, I'd be keen to see him back in. I was very much of the belief a little while ago there's no point rushing him, and there isn't, and the club haven't. He did 2 full weeks of full training before he was back in the squad for that Leeds game. And if he's fully fit, let's get him in. Let's get him in. I can see the manager pushing Jake O'Brien out to the right again. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't think any of us are big fans of it. We've seen Nathan Patterson in there, obviously in recent weeks, done a decent job. The manager was quizzed on Nathan Patterson, and he said, I think he's done okay. He wasn't full of praise this morning, David Moyes, I've got to be honest with you. He said he thinks he's done okay when he's stepped in. He's keen to see him develop a bit more. But we have been actively looking for a right back for over 12 months, were his words today. we all know we need a right back, that's for sure. But I think that Patterson does give us that bit more balance on that right-hand side from a defensive perspective, but also in terms of his attacking intent as a full-back, because Jake O'Brien hasn't got that in his locker because he's a centre-half. So that was the right-back situation. And, do we see the defensive back four broken up? Potentially, but I believe it'll be Mykolenko, Branthwaite, Tarkowski and O'Brien. Just my personal opinion, but I can't see anything other than that. Although I would like to see Patterson retain his place, and then the manager's got some real questions to answer there. Tim Irabuda was also mentioned. He was pictured training, I think, yesterday. He said he's not quite there yet, and he also said Alcaraz isn't quite there yet. Although he said he was back in full training, obviously, last week. So we'll see if either of those two are in and around the squad tomorrow. Obviously, it's transfer deadline coming up. I think it's Monday. It's 7 o'clock, something like that. And Tim Irabuda was mentioned in a passing comment in relation to any outgoing players, because there was some reported interest from Lazio. The manager said, players may go, so we've got no intentions at this moment in time, but players may leave. So he hasn't closed the door to that speculation. I'm not sure it specifically means that Irabuda could be the one who does leave, but it does beg the question, is there something in the pipeline in terms of players outgoing? You would like to think that with us losing Jack Grealish, and if another player goes, Everton are going to do a bit of business. But the manager said that we are still looking, but we are less likely than likely to bring somebody in. Make of that what you will. I'm still convinced somebody comes in. It only takes 2 or 3 injuries again for this squad to be decimated. And obviously, if you've lost Grealish already, and say Harrison Armstrong potentially goes back to Preston, which the manager said he's yet to make a decision on, you're down to being pretty threadbare again. So we'll see what happens, obviously, as we approach Monday, see if anything comes up. But the manager was not overly confident at this moment in time. As we know, things change in football. But what I would say, when you see the prices getting bandied around from Arteta and Stan Larson and some of the money which is changing hands for the players at a bang average, you understand at times why clubs, including ourselves, are willing to jump in there. It's the message seemed to be that the owners were keen to protect the PSR position. I think there's a bit of wiggle room this year. If you follow Citizens of Suburbia on X, Twitter, he's very good at the financial side of stuff, and he said that there appears to be a bit of wiggle room. Obviously, it's all about value for money and looking at the longer game. And if the message is, listen, this is going to be a slow build, we don't want to ruin the transfer window in the summer. Maybe it's loans and nothing, or simply nothing. I'd like to think that at least one comes through the door. So watch this space on that. David Moyes also asked about Thierno Barry. Obviously, with the form he's in, 4 goals in his last 5 games. Good finish again, wasn't it? On Monday, he scored a variety of different goals across the board since he started finding the back of the net against Forest, obviously a couple of months ago. So it's great to see him in a bit of form. David Moyes said that. Great to see him finding the back of the net and scoring important goals. Obviously got us a 3 points against Aston Villa. Got us a point against Leeds with his goals there. But he said he wouldn't be satisfied with his overall play, basically. And that tells you a lot, doesn't it, in terms of the manager. And I think, to be honest with you, I take that as the manager's got higher standards. And it's great that he's scoring. And from a confidence perspective, we all want to see him scoring. And we all notice a difference, I think, in his demeanour, in his interactions, I think, with the players and the fans. And obviously, he's that bit more happy doing interviews and what have you. But no one can sit there and say he's being perfect. He's still a very young player. He's still developing. But David Moyes, obviously, there's a standard that we're trying to set here. And just because he's scoring goals, there's got to be more to his game than what we've seen. And that goes for a lot of younger players, doesn't it? They're not perfect. They're far from it. But Thierno Barry will be taking great confidence from scoring those goals that he has done in his last 5 games. But what the manager is sort of saying to him is, listen, the challenge is, score goals, but perform at the same time, because there's more work to be done. And I think that's pretty fair enough, to be honest with you. So that was basically it from the press conference. A little bit of talk, I'd say, Harrison Armstrong James Garner's form, obviously, he's doing particularly well. But with it being fairly quiet on the transfer front, there was nothing drastic in particular to report from that side of things. But it's a pretty quick turnaround, obviously, with us playing on Monday to then travelling down there. Big long trip. Safe trip for everyone, obviously, travelling down. Hopefully, it doesn't finish 0-0 like Phil said on the podcast. He thought it was going to be a 0-0 tomorrow. Fingers crossed it's not 0-0 and it's a more entertaining game and we can come back with the 3 points. Got a decent record there in recent times. As we said on the main podcast of the day, we learned down there last year that you can actually be booked for impersonating a seagull, which was all news to us. So I'm sure Iliman Ndiaye will be weary of flapping his arms again when he scores. Hopefully he scores. But safe tips for all Evertonians. That's me for today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with the usual podcast on Sunday to look back on the Brighton game and look ahead, obviously, to Fulham the following weekend. So we'll catch you then.